The Lexus NX is the Japanese manufacturer's mid-size SUV, and this is a brand new second generation model. A few details that are worth pointing out. The wheelbase is longer than before. It's only by a matter of 30 millimeters, but that should increase interior space. Despite that, and despite the fact that the car is a bit longer, it's no heavier than before, and that's quite a good thing these days. And Lexus has managed to reduce the centre of gravity as well, so that should help ride and handling, which we'll talk about later on. The new NX is a bit of a gentle enough evolution in terms of design from its predecessor. However, it is more curvy and yet also more muscular. As ever, there's a big spindle grille on the front. It's the design trend now more than ever, actually. What we have is an F-Sport model, so a bit sportier looking. It's got these black inserts, it's got bigger wheels, and it's a bit lower as well. It's got really expressive headlights, and that's a bit of a design hallmark for Lexus. Anyone that thought that the previous NX looked a bit narrow and tall from the back will really like the new one. It's far more muscular. It starts here with this beautiful character line in the wing, so it's really quite sharp and leads into these lights. It's a full width light bar, which is all the rage again, but it kind of comes out here a bit as well, doesn't it? So it adds width to the car, and the car looks really attractive from there, if you ask me. Another important thing back here, this badge. This is the 450h Plus model, and that indicates a massive change for the NX. The 350h, the regular hybrid, will be the entry-level model. However, that's front-wheel drive only, and for only a few grand more, the 450h Plus adds four-wheel drive, adds a lot more power, and it goes a lot further in electric mode. I'll talk about the hybrid powertrain a bit more later on in the video, so make sure you stay tuned for that. However, before that, something Lexus is really renowned for is its interiors. We really should check this one out. Before we get in, actually, something else to point out. What looks like normal door handles contain a new e-latch system, so they're electrically opened. Put your hand in and gentle press and it electrically opens the door. It's very subtle, but it's quite tactile and quite pleasing, actually. And it's the same inside. I'll show you that in a minute. So when you get in, this e-latch system is in here as well. It's a little subtle button here, and it's quite tactile again. It's really quite satisfying to just push that and open the door. Now, there's a lot to see in the interior. Lexus interiors are always a highlight of the car, and this is no different, to be honest. It's quite luxurious. This F-Sport model does get these figure-hugging seats, however, so they're a bit snugger, but they're really supportive, and they're very comfortable along a long journey. The quality in here is amazing, but we're kind of used to that in Lexus cars, so nothing new there. The interface is all new, and this is worth a closer look, I think. You've got this very, very big touchscreen here. It's within easy reach. You have the temperature controls on the screen, but they're proper physical knobs, which we keep banging on about, but it's better for safety, easier to use while you're driving without taking your eyes off the road. The touchscreen itself, it's very clear. The menus are easy to use. There's lots in there, all the connectivity you would want. A lot of people, of course, as ever, would probably use the built-in Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. Speaking of which, there's a neat little wireless charger here, and it slides out of the way. There's a hidden cubbyhole. It's kind of useful. Now, there are two different types of USB ports here, two big cup holders, and a large storage bin here. Cleverly, as is Lexus way, this hinges in two ways. So whether you're the passenger or the driver, you open it up and you access what's inside. The design is quite enclosing, so it's spacious, it's plenty of space, but you know, it's sporty, it's snug, and you feel very much like you're in the car. There is, however, a lot of adjustability in the driving position. So this steering wheel adjusts electrically here on the side, up and down, and inside, in and out. As you can see, there's a lot of adjustment. In fact, when you get out of the car, when you switch it off, the steering wheel pulls away from you, and the seat as well pulls away, so it's easier to get in and out. The seat itself, I find, is quite high set, and you can't set it perhaps as low as you can in some rivals. However, that means you get a really good view out in all directions, and despite that, you know, there's still a lot of headroom here. It's a pretty comfortable car. The steering wheel actually we're used to lots of controls on the steering wheel now, and this is quite a simple design, but one feature I found this is really useful is when you hold your finger just over the buttons, just hover over them, up on the head-up display here, it shows you what the button does. So I suppose that would be particularly useful when you're acclimatizing yourself with the car, or when you're driving at night. You don't have to take your eyes off the road at all. You know, you just put your fingers down around here, and up on the head-up display, ahead of you in the distance, you can see what button you're about to press. It works very well. The instrument cluster is also digital. It's relatively simple. Anybody who's familiar with the old Lexus LFA supercar will see a bit of inspiration here in terms of the design of the rev counter, etc. It changes appearance a little bit depending on which of the driving modes you're in, and I'll go through that a little bit later in the video when I'm driving the car. Elsewhere, the quality. I mean, Lexus is famed for it. There's some lovely, lovely materials here, and it's all very tactile. And it feels like a luxury car. It feels like a premium car. As ever, we leave the driving seat in our own position and we sit behind ourselves to see how much space there is. And it's pretty decent in the NX actually. The increase in the wheelbase I mentioned earlier clearly has enlarged the interior a little bit as well. It's on par for the class, that's for sure. One thing the NX has as a bonus above most of the class is a relatively flat floor. There is a bit of a hump here, but it's wide and it is properly flat, so the person who's sitting in the middle will actually have somewhere to put their feet. It's quite good. Speaking of feet, you can see my feet go right in under the seat here. So whereas I mentioned a minute ago that the driver's seat doesn't go down as far as I might have expected, that is to the benefit of rear passenger space. So that's probably not a bad thing. Now, as you can see, plenty of knee room here, loads of headroom here as well. So it's quite comfortable. You actually have big windows as well. So good view out, should be a comfortable place for a long journey. Clearly, the back seats in all cars of this size are better for two people in the back. But this middle seat is actually wider than most and it's quite flat as well. So it's probably not drawing the short straw as it often is. If you're not using that, got this nice armrest with two cup holders here. You've got USB ports here, another 12-volt power port. In fact, this model has heated rear seats as well and vents. So rear passengers are quite well catered for. Owners of the previous NX will be glad to see that Lexus has sped up the operation of the electric tailgate. Within, it's quite a large boot. It's got over 500 litres, and that's the case whether you're in the 350h model or this plug-in hybrid. So Lexus has done a good job there planning that from the start. The back seats split 60-40 if you want to put them down and have a bit more space. And under the floor here, you get plenty of storage room for charging cables and the like. Now, if there's enough charge in the battery, the plug-in hybrid version will take off in purely electric mode. And officially, with a fully charged battery, it'll do over 70 kilometers in electric mode, which is pretty good going actually, when a lot of manufacturers quote 50 kilometers and you get a lot less than that in some conditions. Now, same though in this Lexus, in ideal conditions you'll get over 70 kilometers. In a winter's day, with a bit of motorway driving, I've managed over 50 kilometers, which is still very useful and will cover a lot of people's commutes, let's face it. Like all plug-in hybrids, you need to keep the car plugged in and charged up as often as you can to maximise use of the battery. Cleverly, what Lexus does in the instruments here is it shows two different sections for the battery charge. Full section, and then at the bottom there's like a blue section. And what that means is the car is running as a regular hybrid when the battery depletes below what is a decent enough level to drive as a plug-in hybrid. So I guess Lexus is reminding us that it's still a hybrid even when the battery charge is low. And that's quite clever actually. That means better economy overall, better efficiency. It means just like any Lexus hybrid, you dip in and out of electric power quite frequently actually. Aside from the quietness, which is lovely, this car has a lot of power. When both the electric motor and the petrol engine are working maximum together, you get over 300 horsepower. And it's a fast car, it really does feel fast. It's also far more precise than its predecessor on the road. It's good to drive, the steering is good. It still majors on comfort, and refinement. It's got double glazed glass here on the side, road noise and wind noise are very, very well subdued. The engine itself, it's a 2.5 litre petrol engine, and when it comes into play, when it is needed, it's quiet, it's smooth. Only perhaps when you go into the sportier driving mode, and if you're pushing on, will you hear it a bit more. Speaking of the driving modes, down here is quite a big tactile control for those, and it's in normal all the time. You can press the button at any time to go back into normal, and there's also a custom mode actually. So within that you can alter the powertrain, you can alter suspension between normal and sport, and other things like the air conditioning. Most people obviously would probably leave it in its default setting. If you want a bit more response, you can twist it into the S for sport or S Plus settings, and that gives it a bit more response, it firms up the suspension in this model. It also makes the steering heavier. Personally, I feel it's really good in its normal setting and it doesn't really need that. There is also an eco mode where you can absolutely eke out the best economy from it. I mentioned earlier there are Executive and F-Sport models in the range, the F-Sport version here. Now, the Executive model is the one for outright comfort. If that's all that matters to you, if you want comfort, the most refinement, that is the one. It rides on small alloy wheels, which means there's more tyre sidewall to absorb bumps in the road, etc. So it's quieter. It's also slightly more efficient. The F-Sport, personally, it looks better. I think it looks better. It does drive with a little bit more precision. Suspension has been tweaked for that reason. So it perhaps drives it more like its German rivals, which is perhaps what Lexus was aiming at. Still, it doesn't give up on refinement for that. So, you get a bit more precision and a bit more driving enjoyment, but you still get the Lexus refinement and quality and quietness, especially if you're driving on electric mode. There's no doubt that the second generation NX is better to drive than the original. The original kind of floated a bit and it didn't feel so precise on the road, and precise is definitely a word, and I know I've said it a few times, but it describes how this car drives quite well. Depending where you live, the fact that it has all-wheel drive could be a real boon. A bit more traction, slippery conditions, a bit extra security on wet roads, etc. When you're in electric mode, it's still pretty responsive. You've got that low-down torque of the electric motor, and it will actually travel at above motorway speed limits in Ireland for that. So it will do 135 kilometers an hour apparently in electric mode. Obviously, you won't get over 70 kilometers on the battery if you're speeding like that, but it's good to know that you can do a short commute, include a small bit of motorway, and you might still use electric power all the way. The Lexus NX with its hybrid powertrains is more relevant than ever. It puts it up against the Audi Q5, the BMW X3 and others, and this second generation model is higher quality, better to drive, and it looks a lot better too in our opinions. The interior, as ever, is quite a special place to be. If you're buying one, I think it's a no-brainer to go for this plug-in hybrid model. As I said at the top, it's a little bit more expensive, but you get a lot for that. Let us know what you think. If you want to read a written review of the Lexus NX and all of its rivals, then make sure you go to completecar.ie. Thanks for watching.